Looks like we've got 16 folks. I know I'm on here twice. I'm probably showing up as being on here twice because I got two laptops open. Also, just wanted to full disclosure. Councilmember West is listening in, just as he hasn't had the opportunity to listen in on a lot of these. So he's not going to be participating. He's preparing for tomorrow's council agenda, but was just let me know that he was going to have it on in the background, and just kind of wanted to listen to the sausage get made. So I guess with that, Mike, if we can go ahead and get started.
You bet. I mean, we'll call it to order and turn it over to you for going through where we stand.
Excellent. Sounds good. So tonight we have a lot of slides to get through. You probably saw whenever I sent them out at the end of the week last week. I don't think we'll get through all of them, but we'll just go as fast as we can and try to be as comprehensive as possible. I'll start with just a few updates, and then we'll start with transportation and infrastructure, and then dive into the land use recommendations. I know that's the bulk of the material. And then I'll no matter what, I'll fast forward through the slides to get to next steps. Really, the only staff update that I have to report is, once we've been having conversations with folks in the community, and our department's been working with our city's Office of Equity and Inclusion, and the goal is to have a fully translated version of the draft available as well. What that means is, whenever I finish the draft in English, my department doesn't have the resources to take on 100+ page document. So we're working to have some assistance with that. So once the draft is done in English, there will be a little bit of a lag time before the Spanish version is completed. And so we'll make those go live at the same time. Just kind of wanted to, let y'all know that. And so we won't have any sort of public engagement around the draft until we've got both drafts ready to go. Just kind of wanted to give you all an update on that. It's a little hard to know exactly when that will be. We'll move as fast as we can. I just kind of wanted to bring that up because I know it may have been something of interest to some folks. Monique, do you have anything else? I think you're still on right this second. You didn't have anything else, did you?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay.
Except to say hello to everyone. Oh, and I'm gonna drop off for a short little window. I'm working on a presentation with the college, so short little window, and I'll be back. So I apologize. I need to do that.
No worries. Sounds good. All right. Well, why don't we take our dive into the next two sections of recommendations? We've got transportation and we've got land use to get through. I figured it's best to start with land use transportation because it's a shorter section, and I feel confident we can get through it tonight. I appreciate everybody who went ahead and had given some comments on the online survey portal a few weeks back. That was helpful, and we'll go over those. I have those in the slides here. But just to get started, really we kind of grouped everything that we heard from the community kind of fell into four main buckets. It was sidewalks, new sidewalk repair, other probably larger, more substantial public right-of-way improvements. These really were focused on issues in commercial areas, so downtown Elmwood, Hampton, Clarendon, areas where people are like, this is a commercial, vibrant area, or it could be, but there's a lot of infrastructure needs in these areas. So we're kind of calling those design improvements, placemaking, things like that. Comments about bike lanes and trails, really multimodal movement. And then lastly, kind of a catch-all related to traffic calming. So those are the four main infrastructure things that we heard. So I've shared this map with y'all in the past. There's maybe been one or two minor tweaks. This is where we're at in terms of, a proposed bike network for the area. Currently, there are no bike lanes, so anything would be an improvement. But a couple pieces I'll just kind of note. Davis is funded through, it's a project that's already funded and under development right now with the city and the county. So this plan is kind of just piggybacking off of that one because we know it's coming. And then Tyler and Vernon, that's another project that is under design right now, I believe, in our city's Department of Transportation. So that that'll be, probably another year or two before installation. But those two we know are coming. Everything else would be new. It's kind of worth noting that there's two different facility types that we show on here. There's obviously Brown would be some sort of off street system, so a trail. The one that's over here close to in Elmwood, that's obviously the Elmwood Greenway. Most of that exists today. The expansion is under construction. I actually I was over there a couple of weeks ago. It looks like they're making pretty good progress, but so that one, that's one trail. And then this other one is one that we talked about in the Parks and Open Space section, but that's along Coombs Creek Drive between Westmoreland and Martin Weiss Park. All the other ones are on street. And, I was advised by the Department of Transportation to not get into the specifics of the type of facility that would be provided, because those are things that there's kind of two different things. One, we've got a bike plan update happening. It just launched. I think we're about to procure a consultant. And so the good news is this plan will just basically be plopped into that one like a puzzle piece. And, it'll be one of the easier areas of the city because there already will have been engagement around it. But the specifics of, the dimensions on the bike lane and things like that, those really have to get fleshed out by that department through that plan. So we were kind of advised to just keep it as an on-street facility, and the exact design will be determined later. The next thing around sidewalks and sidewalk repair, I try to put this all on a map, but it maybe isn't the complete comprehensive list, but there were kind of four main things that are moving concurrently that we're tapping into. So the city of Dallas has a new strategic mobility plan, and the strategic mobility plan outlined priority projects. They had different priority projects by council district. So we wanted to include all of those because those are projects that score really highly, because the city now has criteria on how they evaluate capital improvements like that, including equity. So areas that are, either lower income or historically disinvested areas are going to score higher than, perhaps areas in far north Dallas or something. But then, so that's kind of one bucket. Another bucket is the Dallas Sidewalk Master Plan, which got adopted last year. And that has dedicated money set aside for it. And we actually got pretty lucky in West Oak Cliff because an area right here, they identified as a focus area, kind of around the Hampton Dart Station. And so there's $15 million set aside to install sidewalks in a couple of these focus areas in the next 3 years. So these projects on Hampton and Hollywood and Illinois, they've got money lined up, and those are things that are likely to happen here in the next couple, 24 months. So that's exciting. So I captured all of those in here. There's kind of a more nuanced bucket. And Yolanda, I see your comments. I'll get to in just a second. There's a kind of a more nuanced bucket of the COG, the NCT COG, which is North Central Texas Council of Governments, and DART did a transportation study around the DART stations in Dallas, looking at improvements that are needed. And so they identified a laundry list of needs. And instead of putting that giant laundry list of needs into onto a map or into a list of recommendations, I kind of just we're just going to reference it. I'm happy to share that with you. I was going to put it in the appendix of the document because I think it's really important. But a lot of those were more ADA accessibility at the DART station itself or directly adjacent to the DART station on city right-of-way. And then the last bucket is everything that none of those plans captured, but people think are important. And so this is kind of this isn't to say that this is the end-all be-all list, but it is to say that these are the ones that we continued to hear over and over of where improvements were desired. And this list has already actually been shared with, by the council member's office. It's already been shared with the bond office to be put in their needs inventory list so that they get scored. They've already been scored because it's a simple scoring metric. They've already been scored, and a lot of these could turn into bond projects in the next bond. So I'll stop there. I know, Yolanda, you got some questions. Is traffic calming an issue?
I just wanted to make sure not to forget. So whenever is appropriate.
Yeah, no, good question. Traffic calming is a big issue on Hampton. It came up a million times from people. Bike lanes are not really feasible for various reasons. I'll be honest, I pushed for them, and the traffic volumes are too high to remove lanes of traffic. So in I'll kind of talk about some of that in the Hampton Clarendon section a little. But there are some other traffic calming strategies for Hampton, as well as some of the other busy corridors. Okay, second one, Boyd Street from Ferndale to Illinois be added. Okay, that's a good one. I'll write that one down. So
the neighborhood's already put the request in and has reached out to Mayor Pro Tem West about putting it on the bond list for 2023. So
great. Well, yeah, we can capture that in here. That's easy. Luckily a lot of these are going to score really highly because they're near transit, they're near parks, they're near schools. And so unlike maybe some areas of the city where the scoring criteria might not favor new sidewalks immediately, a lot of these are streets that I think we could see implementation really quickly. Greg, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was just curious, was staff able to go over the social pinpoint feedback and incorporate it into a lot of this?
Yeah, I mean, so I pulled all of this from that. That isn't to say that, there might not have been one person who said, hey, come fix my curb at this one spot. It's not that, we can't capture every person's concern in a document this large. It isn't to say that I wouldn't, we would strongly encourage people if there is an issue in your area, call 311, flag it to, your council member. These are the ones that we're trying through this document to identify things that can happen in the short term, 5 years. And all of these are ones that have been identified in other documents or score really highly. And I think we could see most, if not all of these worked on in the next, half decade.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. That's great. I know there was a lot of great feedback and ideas on that social pinpoint. I want to make sure it's getting utilized.
Absolutely, yeah. Oh, go ahead, Yolanda. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, some of the comments related to I don't feel safe crossing at an intersection or more things like that. And so a lot of that's going to get captured in some of the next buckets of things.
My request my request actually is for us to go back and take a look at 75211, which again, we all know is that block that has little to no representation, which is near Martin Weiss. Because you can see there's no discussion about sidewalk improvement. And I know from block walking and also those meetings that there's lots of need in that neighborhood.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, I mean, the Illinois project is one that was from Connect Dallas plan. But that's a really, let me spend some time going back to Social Pinpoint and seeing if there's anything on there as a starting point. And then if it just means looking at streets and working with our transportation department and public works department, we can definitely do that. I'll keep us moving, but we can bounce back and forth between slides as needed. So the next one is kind of some of those larger public realm placemaking opportunities. I kind of think that there's kind of two different ways that we can think about them. You've got these busy streets like Davis and Hampton and Clarendon that are on the thoroughfare plan, that removal of lanes is not something that Clarendon is only 2 lanes anyways, but removal of lanes is not something on Hampton that's possible, but on Davis it's actually possible. And I can show the cross sections for that here it's further down in our slide deck when we talk about West Davis, but pretty substantial reconstruction of the sidewalk is planned for up there. And again, that's a county project, but so there's kind of those, and then there's smaller scale placemaking interventions. Those could be anything as small as, reconstructing some curbs, new crosswalks, some new bulb outs and landscaping, or it could be something a little bit more substantial, like in downtown Elmwood. I think there's some real opportunities to try to include that area in the next bond for some complete street improvements that, kind of reimagines that area and formalizes some on-street parking, puts in bulb outs, fixes some intersections that are currently dangerous and hit at skewed angles, things like that. So these are kind of all of these, and I asked you all about these, and I'll get to the scoring here in just a second, because I kind of had people who voted online rank them. And it isn't to say that that's like how we're going to put them in here. I want it to be a discussion, but it was interesting to kind of see how high certain things scored versus others. And then the last bucket of traffic calming. So these were all of the streets that through the in-person meetings and Social Pinpoint, somebody said, I want traffic calming on my street. That's a lot. Some of these are very residential streets. And I was told by, the transportation department and public works department that traffic on local residential streets like this is a 311 issue. It's not really something that they can address. So that kind of automatically removes Sheldon and Ravinia and Barnett and Mountain Lake. Some of these others have other projects on them in terms of, Vernon, you're talking about lane reduction to add bike lanes. But in addition to that, there's opportunities to think about flasher crosswalk lights at, I forget, there's a couple intersections to get over to the Wynwood Shopping Center. On Hampton, there's really on all the major thoroughfare corridors, Hampton, Jefferson, and Westmoreland, you've got these large medians that are basically devoid of landscaping. There's a big push by our city's urban forestry group, the Texas Trees Foundation, to landscape medians because it's kind of a no-brainer free piece of land to get some tree canopy where currently we don't have any. It's studies show that people drive slower when there's big trees in the median because there's an obstacle. It isn't to say that it's going to solve the problem, but it's one of a number of solutions that we can implement. So each one of these is going to kind of have to have a different strategy, but I just kind of wanted to put that on a map. So here were some of the comments that folks gave through the online portal. It's a lot to read through. I'm happy to do it. Somebody said a traffic signal on Edgefield seems unnecessary. You know, I think that is it Edgefield and Ferndale. That's something that, you know, that's ultimately going to be a traffic study that would, you know, figure out what is needed. More than likely, it's going to be a stop sign. I think a stop sign at Edgefield and Ferndale in the middle of downtown Elwood makes a lot of sense because it could really slow traffic down on that street. Sidewalk improvements going all the way to Wright Street instead of Brandon. The answer is yes. It's just going to be the scope of what those sidewalk improvements are. On the commercial stretch, I think it's going to be kind of an above and beyond enhancement in terms of thinking about opportunities for additional landscaping and street trees. On the stretch between Brandon and Wright, which is more residential, it's probably going to be, there's places that don't have sidewalks. So just getting a sidewalk would be a win, but building a new sidewalk is a huge priority on that stretch. There was a comment about closing median openings where possible. Definitely, that's something that we'll talk about in the Hampton-Clarendon area because there's definitely some opportunities there to do that. Modifying Clarendon on the thoroughfare plan, that was a really good catch. That's definitely something that this plan is going to recommend because currently it's right now on the thoroughfare 4 lanes. There's no plan to make it a 4-lane street. The plan is to put bike lanes on the street. But to do that, we'd have to amend the thoroughfare plan anyway. So this plan will definitely make that recommendation. Comment about traffic calming on Vernon between Illinois and Clarendon. That specific intersection at Elmdale Place. Really good comment. Boyd Street sidewalks. We already got that tonight, but that's another great one. Closing access to Tyler at the Vernon split for traffic calming. It's a good idea. You know, it's something that let me you know mention that to the engineers because a lot of times urban designers and engineers don't always see eye to eye. I see Greg laughing. So, and then the trail path on Coombs Creek from Jefferson to Clarendon. So really thinking about traffic calming in general on that stretch of Coombs Creek. That's a challenging, I'll go back to the map, just kind of show the area we're talking about. That's this stretch right here. It's a challenging stretch because it's a really tight right of way with a lot of curves, with a lot of drop in elevation. You know, the right of way is just really narrow. But I think prioritizing some sorts of pedestrian improvements on that street, I think further study would be needed by engineers to know what's possible there. But I definitely think that maximizing the pedestrian experience on that street is important. A comment about bike lanes on Jefferson. You know, I didn't even know that there were bike lanes on Jefferson in Cockrell Hill, and I went and looked at them, and it's only on a short stretch. I guess the issue on that, I guess that was done by the county. I don't really know who worked on that improvement project with the roundabouts in Cockrell Hill. I do know that the city of Dallas in general is looking at, you know, different ways to calm traffic on Jefferson just to the east of our study area. And some solutions could be wider sidewalks. This is also the busiest bus corridor in the network. So maybe it's dedicated bus lanes and traffic signal prioritization to, you know, to make it even better for buses. I don't know if bikes make a lot of sense just because of the high travel speed, the almost interstate-like quality of the roadway kind of there between Hampton and Jefferson because you got that big banked curve. But I can talk to our transportation department about that. Ravinia. So Ravinia we identify as a street for bike lanes. It's definitely an opportunity to take it from a 4-lane street down to a 3-lane street with bike lanes. Very similar to, if anybody's familiar with what was done on Matilda and McMillan in East Dallas over near Greenville. they did the exact same thing, and traffic actually flows better because you've got a dedicated turn lane for people to sit in if they're trying to turn, and through traffic can just move through. And then you've got a safe opportunity for cyclists. Superior needs sidewalks. I think I captured that. I guess the comment was Superior needs sidewalks. Sorry, my computer just froze. It needs sidewalks in the Jimtown area. The issue with that was it's too narrow for bike lanes, but sidewalk improvements definitely. Pier Street we captured in there. Wright Street is a street that that there's opportunities for bike lanes and sidewalks. Improvements near the Martin Weiss Rec Center. I think that's a really good comment, and one that you know, kind of goes in line with what Yolanda said about the 75211 area. And then sidewalks needed between on Shasta between Emmett and Falls. My computer just decided to freeze for a second, so give me a second. The PowerPoint basically crashed. It wouldn't be fun if it didn't keep us on our toes. All right, loading back up.
We can still see and hear you. It's just we don't see.
I know. My computer's fine. It's just the application for PowerPoint crashed.
Right.
All right, there we go. So that was all the comments. And then folks scored. They kind of you got to score like a 1 was like a lowest priority, 5 is a highest priority. So I just kind of put those public realm enhancement lists and then the sidewalk priorities. So I just thought it was interesting to kind of see, you know, what bubbled up to the highest on the list. I think the plan should still include all of these. But this does help us understand priorities so that if budget is an issue, you know, where things should, you know, maybe go first. You know, Clarendon, and then the streets around the Tyler Vernon Dart Station scored really highly, and then Hampton scored really highly. And then in terms of public realm and design enhancements, downtown Elmwood, almost everybody said it was the highest priority. And then Hampton was close behind that. And then some of these other little smaller pockets in kind of in the other, you know, North Cliff area scored a little bit below that. So
Daniel, a
Yeah.
quick question about nullity between Montclair and Clarendon in terms of highest rated sidewalk priorities. When I look on, I mean, I'm familiar with Nolte Street, and I just wanted to ask if we could double check those cross streets because I can't see where Nolte crosses. Oh, yeah, I remember now. I remember now where Nolte crosses Clarendon. Okay, I take it back.
Okay.
Just wanted to make sure those, because I don't, I think those are correct now that I think about it. Just wanted to double check.
Yeah, no, thanks for catching that. I'll go double check all of these again. So those are the transportation recommendations. Obviously, the maps are going to be really important, you know, find their way in the document, and then just turning those maps into a little bit of written text. But really just wanted to have a discussion and go through these and capture any other comments that people had. And I can go to whatever slide people might have questions on.
Daniel, I noticed a couple of places you identified as what do we call them? The urban design and placemaking, like downtown Elmwood is a good one. And then there are other spots that you identified as kind of roadway improvements. I might suggest taking a look at that stretch of Clarendon from Hampton just east of Hampton. There's some other good, right in there. That may be another opportunity to combine roadway improvements with urban design and placemaking.
No, that's a really good point. because I think there's a ton of opportunity there. I think if you, on that stretch, especially because, you're talking about bike lanes, which would be removing some on-street parking, but you've got so much pavement there. You could formalize some on-street parking where today it isn't really formalized and make everything fit. It would just require some reconstruction. That's a good point. Paul, I see you have your hand up.
I don't know if you guys can hear me, but I was going to say, I wanted to hear everyone else's thoughts on maybe having like on Hampton in particular, maybe Illinois too. So we know there's a ton of traffic on Hampton. So perhaps we maybe put a note in the phone saying, hey, as a relief valve, you can have like bus lanes or something, or HOV/bus lanes on the outer lane during peak hours. Since it's too many cars of traffic calm, but you can prioritize those who are partially in the using buses. But I want to know everyone else's thoughts on that.
Well, I will add, I'll just say on that, the new bus network just launched yesterday. And
Testing it out now.
yeah, and Hampton's frequency increased. It's not the highest frequency, but I think it's now every 20 minutes. And something that DART and the city are beginning to work on, although it's a few years out, is how do we begin to take the bus network to inform the thoroughfare plan to inform traffic improvements. And Hampton is one of those corridors that's kind of a no-brainer.
I did want to hear from others. Sorry.
Yeah, Paul, to add, I think I don't know if I dreamed this or what, but I was having the same thought the other day of taking one of those lanes and converting it, still using it for transportation because we know that Hampton is busy, but anything to slow folks down, but still move the proper number of people through. I don't think we need to cater to cars. I don't think that's what we necessarily want coming through our neighborhoods, but I do think that a converted lane like that, I think is a great idea.
Yeah, like I said, I was just thinking of it as kind of a, hey, as if Hampton becomes more mixed use or something like that as the area densifies. So I said, just thinking of it as like a relief valve.
Can I ask you a question, just for clarification on bus lanes on streets? Are cars prohibited in such lanes, or do buses just have priority and cars are supposed to move away if a bus is nearby or something like that?
It depends. In Dallas doesn't really have any truly dedicated bus lanes. There are examples in the medical district on Harry Hines and on Commerce Street and Elm Street downtown.
Yeah, I've seen those.
I would not really say are very good examples. Those could, I've seen some cities have it where certain times of day it's bus only. So like during rush hour, it is bus only. And enforcement is a mixture of on your honor, and I guess you could get a ticket if an officer saw you there. And then, then there's other bus lanes that are, almost physically separated. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not, but those are purely for bus only. But those are much more often in more urban environments like downtown.
Yeah.
So I think kind of a flex lane, like Paul mentioned, is something that would make more sense in this kind of urban context.
Yeah. Okay.
I think I saw Yolanda's hand up.
Just a quick question about, and maybe I missed it, how you identified these little spots, because I understand Edgefield, but some of them seem really random. And two, this is my own information. Where do I find examples of what this type of change would look like? Or where can you point me to?
Yeah, good questions. I would say the vast majority of this came from the public meetings and the social pinpoint, in terms of people saying, hey, I want improvements here. Hey, can we activate this area? This area is not safe as a pedestrian. You know, that was, we heard it at both the meeting and online. And then in terms of examples of what this might look like on a scale the size of downtown Elmwood, an example would be, you know, Lower Green in terms of they took it from 4 lanes to 2. Obviously that diet. They've done improvements on Cedar Springs. They've done improvements on over in Oaklawn. They've done improvements on Henderson in East Dallas. They've done some improvements they've done them on Elm Street in Deep Ellum, and they're about to do them on Commerce in Deep Ellum. You know, so those are examples of those were from our 2012 bond, which were our complete street project bond, but I don't want to say that those aren't good examples. Those are just different contexts. And so, you know,
There's no,
I think
no examples in Oak Cliff right now, like in the Bishop Arts area.
most of that's been driven by private development, but
Okay.
Davis Street, you know, when they just reconstructed Davis Street phase 1 between Zhang and Clinton, somewhere around there. And you've probably noticed around like Tyler Polk area, there's a bunch of new sidewalks and you know, the on-street parking kind of got fixed. And so that's an example of what improvements in one of these areas might look like in terms of full reconstruction of the sidewalk, new crosswalks, new street paving, dedicated on-street parking, street trees, that kind of stuff. Elena had a question that was, it sounds like you reached out to other city departments to find out what is planned. How well does this plan dovetail with other planned improvements? We did our best to make sure that it jived to the greatest extent possible. I think this plan should reference and align with already adopted plans that are saying, hey, let's do new sidewalks on such and such street. But it's also, I think, the role of this plan to go above and beyond. So that's where things like, you know, some of these additional sidewalks or the bike lanes or what y'all were just talking about on Hampton with maybe some dedicated bus lanes, all of those things are things that are in no plans. This plan can kind of be the first place that gets put in a document, and then hopefully it can find its way into future plans for other departments. All right. Anybody else have any other questions or comments? Well, hearing none, we can move on to land use. I know it's a more exciting topic than our streets, but there's a lot of us who care a lot about our streets. So, all right, land use and development. So I know I showed this map last time, and just to step back a second. So, the cities, as I've mentioned in the past, the city is currently in the early stages of updating our citywide comprehensive land use plan, which is Forward Dallas. That was adopted in 2006. That was the first time the city had ever done a comprehensive plan. So in that sense, that was that was great. But most cities update their comp plan every 10 years. So we are well past due to have an update to our plan. A lot has changed since 2006. You know, smartphones didn't exist. Uber and Lyft didn't exist. The economy hadn't crashed and recovered and then crashed again. So a lot has changed. And, you know, all of those things made it time to update the plan. Another thing that plan did not include was a future land use map. Oh, you're still seeing the, huh, okay. Let me, I'm noticing you're right. I'm not sharing the land use map. Let me try that again. All right, there we go. I assume that's a yes. Okay, good. So the Forward Dallas in 2006 had what was called a vision illustration, but it didn't have a future land use map for the entire city. And this update to Forward Dallas intends to deliver a future land use map for the entire city. What that essentially will do is serve as a guiding tool for elected officials and city plan commission to determine if an individual rezoning case is appropriate in an area. So for instance, you've got, I'm trying to think of a good example. You've got here in Jimtown, it's residential neighborhood. If somebody said, I want to zone that MF3, which would allow for, multi-story, multifamily, this would be a guide that city plan commission and city council could easily look at and say, no, that's totally inappropriate. That doesn't align with the future land use map. Most cities have been doing this for decades. Dallas is not. What this will do is provide, I guess, a pre-adopted justification for certain land use decisions. It isn't to say that, that there isn't some nuance in this, obviously, but it by and large, it should be almost at a parcel level, knowing, what makes sense in an area versus what doesn't.
And it's also important to understand that the city council at any given time in the future could approve a zoning change request that is inconsistent with the plan, but the plan is intended to be an important hurdle to anything that might be inconsistent with it once the plan has been approved by city council. But the city council does have the ability to do that in the future. The theory being that 5 years from now, there may be an idea that is inconsistent with the plan, but everybody in the area wants it. And so the city could then say, okay, well, we'll have to set aside the plan idea and go ahead and look at this, even though it is inconsistent with the plan. Just want to throw that out there, how that works.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And, whenever Forward Dallas gets adopted in the future, 5 years after that, if another area plan in, I don't know, the medical district or something came through, there was an area plan done up there, they would generate a land use map of their own, maybe because they wanted to refine it. And, there were some changes that they thought that Forward Dallas map didn't align with what their vision was, or they wanted to make it better. That could get adopted into Forward Dallas as an amendment. Yolanda, I see you got your hand up.
Well, when I think Mike was talking about the plan, was he referring to this particular plan or or the bigger plan? So I guess I'm curious, once we adopt this, is this what goes forward as part of the bigger city initiative about a land use map?
Yeah, this map is a puzzle piece that will fit into the land use map for Forward Dallas.
All right.
And as I mentioned briefly on that last meeting a couple weeks back, the colors of what these blobs are or where these blobs are, those can change based off our conversation here tonight and what the community says. The names of the categories in terms of residential neighborhood, commercial center, neighborhood mixed use, those are predetermined. Those are things that are essentially derived from the last Forward Dallas update in conjunction with work that staff is doing in my department, in conjunction with there's a Forward Dallas committee that CPC has. So we're trying to make sure that all of these place types are the exact same all the way through. So what that means is, each one of these categories in West Oak Cliff, there's only 5 categories. For the whole city, there will be more. There will be like 10 or 15. Each category will have some pictures, like, what this looks like. Obviously, there's nuance in different areas of the city, and then, what the character is of that area. And something that I think Forward Dallas will speak to, and we can speak to it as well in this area plan, is, what zoning categories might make sense in each of these things. But I want to be really clear that this is not a zoning map. This is entirely a vision map of that can help inform making the zoning decisions, but it's not zoning. So before I move on, I'm happy to answer questions.
So if this is not a zoning map, which I get, it's a really pretty picture. What would be like, is this something that you would say will influence what that zoning map looks like?
Yeah, well, today, most of this aligns fairly closely with the zoning. I mean, in terms of residential being where single family zoning is, and mixed use zoning being where the PD up on Davis is, I mean, so there's alignment there.
Mhm.
In I guess to say, will it influence zone? I mean, it'll influence zoning in the future. So, the plan, I think the plan that we're pulling together here will have all the recommendations of potential future zoning changes addressed in the plan. But if a private entity on a single piece of land wanted to come through and say, hey, I want to rezone my property, that's when the map would be used by city plan commission and city council and city staff to be like, no, that doesn't make sense. Or, yeah, no, that aligns with what, this category says. So,
Right. Well, so for example, that area that is Clarendon and is that Hampton right there in the middle?
yeah,
I mean, it's
yeah,
currently not zoned mixed use. Is that correct?
that's correct.
So the next step from this process would be to start a process to rezone it as such?
Well, yes, that's correct. And it's already an authorized hearing currently. And so this area plan, we'll get into the specifics of each of these areas here in a
Okay.
second. This area plan will be making recommendations to say, hey, the zoning doesn't align with what the community is interested in seeing here. We recommend that, that the zoning gets changed in the future to align with what the community desires.
Last question.
Yeah.
Are all of these that are on here as mixed use or urban residential, are they already a part of a process to change?
They are not.
As we go through them, you'll point out which ones are already on versus not.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. So these, and some of these, a lot of this is aligned with what the current zoning is, I should say. So everything up here on Davis is in a PD, which is zoned for mixed use. This blob right here, that's urban residential, that's an MF2 district that already has multifamily on it. This area down here in everything that's yellow is, some sort of single family district or a conservation district. This commercial center corridor here at Cockrell Hill, that's already kind of there's a post office and a Jack in the Box, and it's zoned commercial. That's multifamily. All of this down here is a different, there's a bunch of different zoning categories on it, but it's mostly commercial there at Illinois and Westmoreland. This blob over here is currently zoned MF1 or MF2. I'll have to go check. And then everything else is in here is zone CR. Well, actually, right up here, this is actually part of PD 670. I don't remember the exact number. It is zoned for mixed use already. All these other blobs are a smattering of different zoning categories that some of them are currently authorized hearings. So North Cliff Neighborhood Center, Hampton Clarendon, Downtown Elmwood, Clarendon Edgefield, those four right there, those are authorized hearings that this plan is obviously going to speak directly to and say, hey, our job is not to write the zoning. Our job is to recommend generally the kind of guidance that people want to see in that area to help city staff go write the zoning and then start that public process. These other areas are zoned mostly CR, which is community retail. And, they are areas that by and large are more in the character of what neighborhood mixed use is than what commercial centers are. That isn't to say that we couldn't, some of this on Westmoreland today is more kind of suburban style commercial. And we could through this process say, let's keep it that way. So this is a draft. So.
And I think that's a good point, Yolanda. The fact that the authorized hearings, they could lead to rezoning. I mean, that's really sort of like their intention is to change, tweak the zoning. But the problem is that these authorized hearings, not only here, but elsewhere in the city, they run into a sort of a roadblock because there's no plan. There's no area plan yet. In other words, there's no global view of what's going on in this area of town. So for an authorized hearing, just plop up and say, we want to rezone this intersection here. The city and everyone is sort of reluctant to do it because we haven't settled down to do a global plan yet. And that's what makes this process so important, is that once this happens, and this is just for anyone new on the task force here, especially, I'm sure Yolanda already knows this, but it's just that when this process is completed, then the authorized hearings that Daniel just pointed out as existing currently, they can then move forward and might potentially, and maybe even probably, lead to a rezoning, an actual rezoning. So it's sort of like first things first, and this is the first thing, the global overview plan that is adopted by City Council, and it's official, but it doesn't rezone anything. And it's just important for everyone to remember the difference between this first step of the global ideas of what we want in the area, and then following that will be authorized hearings, which I've always said was the worst name anyone ever made up for a hearing. All hearings are authorized, but for some reason there's a term of art in city parlance that if it's an authorized hearing, that is going to be a zoning case that's going to go through City Plan Commission and City Council to review not just one property, but a collection of properties. That's an authorized hearing, as if all the other hearings were not authorized. But anyway, it's crazy, but that's what we stuck with. So for the new members of the task force, you'll have to make your little lexicon of terms of art in city planning because you get used to them after a while.
Yeah, we do need a glossary of terms.
Yeah. Sorry for interrupting there.
Oh, no worries. Greg, I saw you have your hand up, and I know Paul does too, but that might be from earlier. So Greg, go ahead if you've got a question or comment.
Yeah, two things. Is this the section where we're able to address form or material? Okay, great.
Yeah, so in terms of materials, that's something that by Texas state law, we have some restrictions on, because I'll leave political commentary aside. But we can talk about buildings on the, in this area should be such and such stories tall, with minimum setbacks from the street, and talk about building character without saying, I mean, it's not our job to say 60% brick and 20% glass or anything like that, but we can talk about, a little, it's going to be a little bit more broad stroke about the types of characters of buildings that
Uh-oh, did we lose Daniel?
Looks like we lost our spokesperson here.
Bummer.
Oh no.
There he is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm on two different computers, so I figured that I couldn't go down on both, right? Did you?
Yeah, I think you did a good job answering my question. That there's an extent to which we can try to address form. Material is something else. If there's any way to address the fact that maybe some of the there are ways to allow more relaxed kind of zoning characteristics or land use characteristics if a developer is willing to enhance their materials, for example. And I don't know if the city is allowed to write that into things like this or not. But I know that behind the scenes, that's how things happen. Oh no, you can only go 2 stories. We'll let you go 3 stories if you do it all masonry, for example.
That is and TIF districts get into that issue a
Can y'all
lot.
hear me?
Yeah, you're back.
Yeah,
Yeah, we can.
All right, 1 second. I knew it would come. I knew it'd come in handy to have 2 computers.
Yeah. But now
Um,
but Daniel, you'll have to play when you get finished with the meeting. You'll have to play back Greg's comments because they're very good points.
I heard like 95% of them.
Oh, okay.
So in terms of, I've never seen a give and take on enhanced materials for like trades and zoning. That might get into some sticky legal issues. Our job isn't to really write the zoning because for these authorized hearings, our job is to deliver a document that says, hey, this is the general types of things people want to see in this area. And then city staff is going to start the authorized hearing process because a lot of these have already been filed. So like Hampton Clarendon, that's already been filed. City staff would say, okay, this is everything that we heard. Turn that into code, go out to the public with the public meeting and say, okay, this is what we heard through the area planning process. And then staff using kind of, their expertise in terms of just writing zoning code. This is where we're at currently. What else would you want to see in here? What's missing? What do you not like? So those will each have a string of meetings as well.
Well, what I was saying too was just when I said TIF district, that's the tax increment finance districts. And I'm not sure whether this area here has any TIF influence in it. Do you know, Daniel?
Up on West Davis, that's it. But up on West
West
Davis
Davis.
is the Davis
But
Garden.
anyway, that's when a developer who wants rezoning also wants city credit or funding, support for infrastructure and things like that. So they come to the city with sort of the request for financial backing. And that is a whole different game then that's when you start saying, well, we'll consider giving you that, but we do want it to be 70% masonry. We want you to have a setback of such and such. Things like that are really not even required from zoning. But if you're asking for money from the city has more capacity to negotiate things like quality of materials.
Yeah,
And,
you actually go through the urban design peer review panel process, so it means you get to come see me because I manage that process with economic development. But those are all struck through development agreements, not through the zoning. So
right.
Okay, and then the other thing I was going to ask is just I know we don't know what's happening south of Illinois on Westmoreland Station, but I just want to make sure maybe somebody can look through their crystal ball and make sure we're aligning with what's happening down there and complementing that.
yeah, that's a really good point. In a perfect world, that area would have been included in this plan. I think that our assumption from a very high level is there's a DART station there. There's a large area for rezoning. Forward Dallas in 2006 identified that as an area for transit-oriented development. It's something that we wouldn't want to. We would assume that is probably the direction that area will head through their own planning process. The limited amount of commercially zoned areas in the area in West Oak Cliff are commercial and multifamily, and that especially that light blue area, if in the future there's a desire to change that land use to something that is more transit oriented and a little bit more mixed use, um, that's something that it's a really good point. And I think that how some of these different land use categories are treated in certain instances, like being near transit, particularly in a situation like that, is something we always have to keep in mind. And it's also something that, the future land use map for the city can change. It can be amended through a process. So, but that requires public meetings and a public process to do that.
Thank you. Yeah.
Paul, I can't tell if you raised it or didn't, or just took it down.
No, I just raised it.
Okay.
So I was just going to add to his question about what's going on south and Westmoreland. So I can say a little bit just from some of the development stuff and from the commercial world. The way everyone else kind of looks at it is everyone kind of assumes there'll be mixed use. I think it is important to note that you have about 200 units of affordable housing in a mixed use development right there off the rail station that's under construction right now. Even though it's outside the West Oakland boundaries, it does kind of give you guys a bit of a relief valve from an affordable housing or just displacement issue. Keeps everyone kind of in the same area. As for everything else, from a practical standpoint, it's not the lots are big, which makes it easier to transform if it goes mixed use. It's just the other, at least right now, it's not a high priority in the commercial world. Not that I've heard.
Yeah, I mean, that's, obviously all the authorized hearings sit in line and they don't move up if they don't have an area plan. So it is not a high priority for the current council member is our understanding. So it is where it is. That can change obviously. And, I think that this is an area that, I mean, we can even just put it in the text of the document that, as development south of Illinois around the Westmoreland station changes, consider, future considerations of what happens on that, on those commercially zoned properties north of Illinois should be considered. I mean, even if it's just kind of vague, that's something this plan could obviously kind of address that way.
Oh, sorry, I did want to add one more thing just on that same note. I know everyone kind of looks south towards that Westmoreland station, but I think it's also important for this plan to account for the Oak Cliff plan, which has the majority of the rail stations in Oak Cliff. And further up the red line, basically from Power Station North, there's much more density expected. It's much more heavily mixed use. So a lot of the housing growth below, if you will, a lot of that is kind of expected to come out of the East Oak Cliff plan due to their proximity to their better suited infrastructure.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what makes our DART system pretty unique. Obviously it got placed in where there was old right-of-way from former rail lines. We've got some DART stations in North Dallas, like the West White Rock station and the Lake Highland station, more or less kind of sit in single family areas. So I think the Tyler Vernon station is kind of unique in that regard. Actually, the Tyler Vernon station is the most single family zoned DART station in the entire system. Just interesting fact. And I think that's we'll talk about the missing middle housing piece because we'll get to that here in a few minutes because I think that thinking about as we say in our vision statement, scaled development, I think something that can be done delicately, that's fine grained, that fits into the neighborhood, that still meets a lot of the objectives that the neighborhood and the city has. So. Well, I'll keep us moving. I don't want to read through all of that text because it's a lot, but I'll send these slides out. I sent them to you earlier, and so I encourage you to read it, and I'll send them out at tomorrow morning as well. But those images kind of give you an idea of what these districts look like in other areas of the city. I mean, I don't think any of this is something that people are wholly unfamiliar with. You've seen these areas in various places in Dallas or in Oak Cliff. So then in terms of the kind of the four main goals, the objectives of the land use and development category, it's to preserve and protect existing single family neighborhoods, promote transit-oriented development opportunities near high quality transit, create walkable neighborhood scale mixed use centers, and preserve historic buildings and character through neighborhood sensitive design. So I'll go into each one of those specifically now. So preserving and protecting existing single family neighborhoods, first and foremost, unless otherwise specified, there are no recommendations to change the zoning
in single family zone districts. The caveat on that being, as we will talk about, is that thinking about some sort of an overlay near transit to allow for some additional residential to come with design requirements and things like that. But for the vast majority of this area that is single family, we're not, if you go back to the map, it's yellow today and it's going to be yellow tomorrow. They're not recommending any changes to that.
Hey, Daniel?
Yeah.
Could you go back to the map really quickly? Because I see how Jimtown is noted here. I know they have an authorized hearing case. So
They do, so
down
they're
in
right
their
there.
area,
Oops.
down in their area, oops. I
Yeah,
see,
right there.
actually, no, Jimtown, is that where it is?
It is, yeah.
I feel like it's a little lower.
No, it's just south of Clarendon, basically right off Hampton, down to Emmett, over to Brandon, or Emmett, Brandon. It's just a little too, I can show
Okay.
you on a map here in a couple
No,
slides.
that's okay. That's okay. Mary Lou had led me to believe that it was on the other side of Wright or Lebanon.
The only authorized hearing in the area is this MF2 district that's right here.
Okay.
And our recommendation is
Right.
to
Okay.
change that to align with the current land use.
Oh, well, that makes me, my question then is, you're saying that area of Jimtown, their concern is that it's already zoned MF2.
Yeah,
And they
so
want to rezone
amend
it.
it. Yeah, so our recommendation is to amend it from MF2 to a lower density zoning category.
But on your map, do you have it designated as MF right now?
No, it's yellow. It's right. It's just a very small area. It's just right there.
Okay, so but although you have it in yellow, it's actually multifamily.
Today it is. In the future, the desire is to change that to not be that way.
Okay, thank you.
And we'll get into the specifics of that in a few slides later. And Paul actually had
those kind of maps, Daniel, can be confusing to people because there's two different ways of projecting it. You can have the zoning map and you can have the use map. And so that may be what we've sort of triggered here is the difference between the zoning there and the use there. And they'd be two different colors, depending on which projection you're trying for. But also, Yolanda, sometimes the authorized hearing does not cover an entire neighborhood. So maybe the geographic question you had, there may be parts of Jimtown that don't need an authorized hearing or nor are they interested in it. And the only little section that we're talking about that had one is where they're interested in doing some corrective zoning. That's possible.
That's my understanding, is that the authorized hearing process started because there's 50 lots in that area. 49 of them are single family uses, and one is a multifamily development. And it was rezoned in the 60s. And so obviously the land use is not reflective of the zoning is not reflective of the land use. And so there's a desire to change the land use to align with the current and desired future land use. Sorry, change the zoning to align with current and future land use, if that makes sense.
But there may be other parts of Jimtown that are zoned as used, and so there's no interest in changing any of that.
Correct.
Yeah, they're all single family.
They are. I just wanted to make sure I was seeing it on the right place on the map, based on my conversation with Mary Lee.
Sure,
and
absolutely.
And I understand then now that map that we're looking at is kind of a future map and not a current map.
Exactly. Yeah. I'll get into Jimtown in the focus area section. We can kind of talk about that a little bit more specifically there. So then the next topic, promote transit-oriented development or high quality transit. So Bob's.
Just a quick question. When you're talking about changing or recommending a downgrade, if you will, in the zoning for Jimtown to a lower density, does that mean that it's still open to like an MF1 as opposed to a residential R75?
So our recommendation, that's a good question. Our recommendation is probably to zone to allow for duplex uses, to allow for single family duplex with accessory dwelling units, because we know that some people, because of the MF2 use that's already occurring, that exists there, some people already have accessory dwelling units. some people are already kind of legally or or illegally kind of have a pseudo duplex operating. And so at least allowing duplexes is definitely something that we think is important. Maybe it needs to be a little bit more intensive, but MF2 is obviously too intensive. And on that topic, actually, Paul had a question in his comments that he sent over the weekend, which were really good comments. So thank you, Paul, for doing that. There's a question about are there legal concerns of changing the zoning? It's one thing to change the zoning to a more intensive use, but to change the zoning away to a less intensive use. Our city attorney's office basically said that the city's job is to recommend zoning that promotes the health and safety and quality of life of the community, and if it's deemed that a current zoning in an area is inappropriate, then we have the through council action to change that. So I know that's a very legal answer to that question.
Oh, sorry. I guess just to clarify on that a little bit, I assume that yes, council can do it. The question was, does it open the city up to liability, as in essentially it's taking up property rights, all that kind of thing, right? That's what I was looking at. No point, the city gets sued because of a loss in value, perceived loss, or an actual loss of value or something, right?
Yeah, and
That's what I wanted to clarify with legal.
And the answer is yes, in theory, we could be sued if somebody wanted to do that. Most instances, they don't win that lawsuit, but in theory, that is something that could happen. So,
Okay, that's all. I just wanted to just clarify.
All right. So on the next category, promote transit-oriented development opportunities near high-quality transit. So number one, consider rezoning the existing Hampton Road commercial corridor between Wright Street and Illinois to allow for transit-oriented neighborhood-scale mixed-use development. And then I say, see the station focus area recommendations, because we get more on all of these. We get more into the nitty-gritty in each of those focus areas. Number two, on non-residentially zoned properties within a half-mile of the Tyler Vernon Dart Station, which includes the Edgefield Clarendon intersection, which is already in hearing, explore opportunities to amend the zoning to encourage neighborhood-scale mixed-use development. Number three, in areas within a quarter mile of high-frequency bus routes, and then within a half mile of DART light rail transit stations, create a zoning overlay to permit missing middle housing types, including accessory dwelling units, duplexes, triplexes and quadplexes, narrow lot single family and cottage homes where applicable, to be allowed by right, adhering to architectural and urban design guidelines, to be determined on a neighborhood basis. Development will be required to follow existing codes related to ADUs, including parking requirements, setbacks, and massing standards. And then the last one is, in conjunction with citywide parking code reform, consider parking code reductions for commercial, residential, and office uses within a half mile of light rail stations and a quarter mile of the high-frequency bus corridors to enable more financially viable development in these, to produce more walkable, pedestrian-oriented development in the future. That was a lot, and I saw Barbara's hand go up. So, Barbara. We can't hear you if you're talking, Barbara. Okay, I'm not alone in not hearing her, right?
Nope.
Something.
I see you're taking mute on and off. We definitely want to get your comment. Maybe I might suggest calling in from a phone, from like a cell phone, and then just be a phone number. And a lot of times that will, it might be easier to speak that way because you might just be having mic issues with your laptop or something. Well, while we work through technology issue, did anybody else have comments or questions on this section?
I had some comments and maybe a question or two.
Sure.
So I know you'd mentioned, I'm saying this just for everyone here, just to be clear, on in terms of how this will kind of add housing. So basically this overlay would be, everything might be R5, R7.5, but if it's in this overlay, it's allowed to do these other things, to build this missing middle type in an R5, R7.5, provided it fits the other, qualifications, correct?
Yeah, that'd be the instrument to do it. We don't have something like that today, but that's what we'd be recommending. Yeah.
Okay. And basically that, just so everyone's kind of on the same page. So essentially the housing growth strategy here is like very blended. I would, the best comparison, if someone wants to travel and kind of say, well, what does this translate to loosely? Your basic, it sounds, oh, sorry. Do I have an echo? Someone else, maybe?
Maybe, did she just call in?
Yeah, I just called in. Can you hear me?
We can, yeah.
Yep, go ahead. Go ahead, Barbara.
Well, I was looking at this number 3. In areas within a quarter of a mile of high-frequency bus routes, Jefferson Boulevard, and with to put a zoning overlay, that would be practically my whole neighborhood. And I don't think that people in my neighborhood are going to like a zoning overlay at all. That's
Okay.
my point.
No, and I think that
Beverly Hills is north of Jefferson Boulevard between Westmoreland and essentially Plymouth. And if you put a quarter of a mile overlay there, that's going to just slap the people in my neighborhood in the face.
Barbara, what if the zoning overlay allowed for ADUs by right, and that was it?
it's a great
Well,
granny.
ADU, I don't think people would object to that because I think I've got some illegal ADUs going on right now. But if it could be limited to that.
Yeah, that I'm glad you brought it. That was one of my comments as well, Barbara. That I don't think in some of these neighborhoods we necessarily want some of that housing type, but I don't think we don't want all that housing type, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, an ADU, like I said, I think I probably have some illegal ADUs right now, but my neighborhood is single family owner occupied 95%. And this is a working class neighborhood. People are very proud of their little houses and they're very hardworking, and they definitely don't want something that would change the neighborhood from single family, for sure.
Now, Barbara, are there duplexes in your neighborhood?
There are 3.
Okay.
There are 3, and they were probably built before. I mean, this neighborhood wasn't even part of Dallas until 29, and it wasn't annexed until 29. And I wouldn't be a bit surprised if those duplexes might even be illegal, that were built by somebody who bought the land and decided they wanted to put duplexes in. Some of them have been converted to single family, but they're 2 or 3
Okay.
along 9th Street east of Ravinia.
Uh-huh.
But those are the only duplexes in the neighborhood. And all the lots are filled now. We used to have vacant lots in the neighborhood where original wooden structures had burned over time, but and the new houses that are being built are far, far grander than the existing houses. But the little houses are well kept, and people are proud of their little houses. They worked hard to get them. So to endanger that would not be anything that the neighborhood would accept. ADUs, that'd be fine.
Well, and I appreciate that. The intent is not to endanger neighborhoods, but Paul, I don't want to cut you off as well, so I'm just going to step.
Oh, no, that's actually, that was what I was going to just discuss anyway. I'm curious to kind of hear that because, we want everyone to be happy. So with Beverly Hills, Barbara, is it on the single family discussion, is it more important to protect the single family over all else, or is it affordability? Like if you had to pick one, which one is more critical?
Well, my neighborhood is pretty much affordable right now. The new houses are much more expensive than the older houses, but right now, most of the houses in my neighborhood are appraised at about $100,000, land included. And so this is a very definitely a working class neighborhood. It has always been a working class neighborhood. The folks that are moving into the new houses are spending 3 times what the other houses in the neighborhood are appraised for.
So, so just when we had, I know we had in previous meetings, we talked about displacement and gentrification and all of that. If we know that new homes and the area is improving and it's a great value right now because it's mostly working class, is that I don't know if we can realistically assume it will stay static as affordable.
Oh, I don't think it will. I mean, all you have to do is look at what's happening right now. I've had 2 houses on my block that were totally gutted and redone. They added most of the older houses in the neighborhood are 2-bedroom, 1 bath because lots of them were built in the 20s like mine. And that was considered a step up, 2-bedroom, 1 bath. Now everybody wants at least 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. So the houses that have been gutted and reconstructed or remodeled had added 1 bedroom and 1 bath. So they're 3 bedrooms, 2 baths now. But they're also $250,000, $275,000, $350,000. When the grand majority of the houses in the neighborhood are appraised, plus the lot. The lots are $40,000 for a standard lot right now.
So I guess I'm trying to get direction because with my role with Heritage, I just want to make sure everyone's getting the direction they want to go and not with unintended consequences. So let me use myself. Let's say I'm a developer, right? And I'm looking at Beverly Hills. If I were to go there and I bought some home, what would you rather me build? Would you rather me build a home at say 450,000, or would you prefer I build a duplex with an ADU? Like if you had to pick one, and you got to pick something, which would be the preference?
That's a mean question.
It's a mean question, but it's an honest question because we've seen this happen time and time again where these 2-bed 1-home locations, even when they're in conservation districts, when they're rebuilt, they might be 4 beds, 3 baths, even if they're consistent with the style. So that's why I want to bring this hard question up because if you really do want it to be mostly single family, that's okay. We just want to make sure we're understanding what direction the consequences of that, right? And vice versa, if you want it to be more, say, okay, more duplexes or ADUs, right? Understand that trade-off. And I'm sorry for eating up so much time, everyone. I just want to make sure everyone is.
It's an important conversation.
Yeah. Well, my neighbors prefer single family.
So
that may not be very practical, and some of these folks are going to be priced out as the land is reappraised and the houses are reappraised, whether they have that same value that they're being appraised at or not.
So there are some defense mechanisms, but maybe Daniel, would it make sense? Barbara, can you go back to your neighborhood? I'm even willing to go there with you and chat with them and just be sure. Hey, what is their preference? Knowing that it's not a static neighborhood, what direction would they prefer to aim, right?
Yeah, okay. Well, come over and I'll take you around. But this is a very old neighborhood. It was platted in 1914. Many of the houses in the neighborhood were from the 20s. And anyway, but the grand majority of the people you talk to are going to say single family. I'm almost positive. I've been president of the neighborhood association since it was founded, except for 2 years. I can't get anybody else to do it. But yeah, it's pretty funny when you think about it.
And
But
Barbara, does that mean that you're open? You think your neighborhood would be open to narrow lot, single family, and cottage homes? Because those are both single family, just different styles of single family.
well, this neighborhood has bigger lots. The R75 lots are not 7,500. The single family lots in this neighborhood are 8,550 or 8,750 because they were platted before the rules came in. So our lots are bigger. You're right, and there's room for an accessory dwelling for sure.
Yeah,
I could have 2 in my backyard right now instead of the shed that I have back there. But I don't know. Come over and we'll talk to people.
Yeah, definitely.
I
Let's do
invite you.
that. All right. I kind of want to keep this going because every neighborhood really needs to think about kind of what they want to aim for. And also too, while we're having this discussion, and I'm not trying to take over, but it's so important, going forward. Just to understand. So basically what you guys proposed effectively is it's not that different than what you might see over kind of in the M streets in the lower Greenville area. And particularly for the Elmwood, Polk Vernon area, you're getting a pretty good deal. You're kind of getting the density requirements or the expectations, if you will, of an area that doesn't have rail, even though you do have that rail. So, because even if you go station by station, I actually did this a few days ago just to make sure you guys aren't getting overly burdened as we went through it. Even White Rock has about 600 or so units of multifamily by their station, nestled in between the park, the single family, the green space, and the lake. They still have about 600 or so new construction. Lake Highlands, for example, they tore down some of those old apartments and they got a plan. They've already have about maybe 500, 600 or so, maybe a plan for about 1,000 units of Sprouts, a grocery store. You can go all the way through the entire city of Dallas on the northern end, and you'll see much higher intensities on average than what is being, proposed here. Now, that being said, my bet, if I had to bet today, I bet that on terms of the quarter-mile rule of the bus routes, those will get a similar treatment, or they'll want the expectation those neighborhoods is something similar to Skillman, where the ADUs are probably okay. Anything beyond that is kind of a dice roll. It's kind of iffy for those neighborhoods. I would expect, and correct me if I'm wrong, those from Elmwood, Polk Vernon, that for those neighborhoods, ADUs are okay, probably duplexes are okay, and maybe in very, very special cases, something a little bit more than that, right? But for the most part, I would expect Elmwood and Polk Vernon to be a little more open to some of those varieties proposed there than I would expect those in the Jefferson corridor.
And I think this might be a good time for me to, as I jump the gun, I do this too often, and talk about something before I some slides. So let me go through some of these slides, and it might kind of help explain staff's process to some of the recommendations we got to on some of this stuff in relation to thinking about some of these other housing types, transit. And I think, Barbara, your point is really well taken about, I've been thinking about rail, but I haven't really been thinking about the high frequency bus. And so when I put that in there, it's kind of oversight on my part. So.
Well, hey, Daniel.
We have bus lines. We have bus lines on Davis, which is the northern boundary. We have bus lines on Jefferson, which is the southern boundary, and we have bus lines on Westmoreland, which is the western boundary of the neighborhood. So we're surrounded by bus routes.
Yeah, absolutely. Somebody
Hey, Daniel, before we move on,
oh, Nick,
Yolanda had her hand up, and then I had a question.
Sure. Yeah. I'm going to stay on the slide, Yolanda, and then Nick, but I can move around slides as needed.
Sure. Oh, just a quick comment. I think this just kind of goes back to our conversation from the last time we met about this other type of overlay, that is maybe what you're going to talk about, but maybe not, but something that helps neighborhoods maintain their character, maintain their homes, so that they do have some protection from, major gross changes. That's all. I think that that's part of it. It harkens back to that, is that it's not just about just because it's near a rail or a bus, I think it also has to take into respect what the neighborhood wants. I think that's what I'm hearing from Barbara.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think some of the specifics on things like architectural character, that's something that each neighborhood needs to somewhat determine themselves and work on that. And I think that process would have to happen well after the area plan is adopted to identify exactly what those characteristics are. The area plan is going to put a broad recommendation out there that then needs to be addressed at an individual neighborhood basis. And that's what I think task forces and work groups and things absolutely should be created to do that. Nick?
Yeah, I was just wondering where, does the neighborhood empowerment zone that we were talking about, does that fall under a land use category?
So that's
Because
going to be
that's
under
also-
it's not a land, so it's not, the neighborhood empowerment zone is not a land use tool. It is
Right.
it is an economic development, housing revitalization tool. These two recommendations have to speak to each other. I think we can explain that. I think that the recommendation of creating a neighborhood empowerment zone that aligns with the same boundaries as the TOD overlay could be something that we recommend. At the same time, we probably want the neighborhood empowerment zone to be larger than just that area. But the two should be thought of as working in tangent with each other, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the challenges we have as task forces is helping you guys stitch that together in an easy way, because that even just kind of like doing a little soul searching in this little talk, that land use map is a very it's got a lot of gravity to it. Land use maps in general become this thing that people focus on, and without it feeling like it's taking into account more of the comprehensive approach to what is implicating and affecting land use, that map will likely steer the entire conversation. And I don't know if it's maybe a way of getting smarter with our graphics, or something like that. But I think the neighborhood, we're not I think the neighborhood empowerment zone has, in my recollection on task force, is largely, even if it's intended as an economic development tool, it's largely we largely have been talking about it in a land use mechanism, which maybe is a little improper. We're trying to make it do something more than what it's originally designed for.
I would call it a housing tool, which housing has an economic development component and it has a land use component because it's of the land. But the intention.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I don't disagree.
Is to help people's homes, not other economic development things like small business or job creation. That's not the intent of the tool in this area. It would be entirely to help people.
Sure. And that's where, and that's where it, in understanding how that actually lays over these so-called mixed use zones, or these areas of more use intensity that we're looking at, it has an implication to it. Because on this topic, as we get into missile middling housing, like I have things that I like, but I don't want any neighborhood to necessarily do something that that they're uncomfortable with. But I also think that, like Barbara, and kind of picking on you since you brought up Beverly, is that realistically, I'm an architect, and looking at how neighborhoods and developers approach me with different problems they're trying to solve. Single family as a zoning district is done. No matter, I mean, really, we cannot preserve it anymore in terms of what it's been. So the idea is that I'm not like all for just like streamlining some sort of developmental progress. But what I do know is that it, owner occupied, affordable, working class, single family houses in single family districts cannot be maintained anymore. And the grand houses that are being built in your neighborhood are an indication of one aspect of how that change occurs. And I think Paul was bringing up some really good points about the idea of, is the culture of the working class most important, or is the physical appearance of the scale of the buildings more important? Because you can, because generally that's generally what neighborhoods have to choose, is, are they trying to preserve their architecture or and evolve their culture, or are they going to evolve their architecture and preserve their culture? It's usually one or the other. I don't have a dog in the fight about which of these neighborhoods go which way, but I think it's important for all the presidents of the neighborhood associations here, y'all have to educate your neighbors that really is what we're facing. That's the resiliency plan for y'all's neighborhood discussions.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, Nick. And I think what I'll just add is, something that all cities are grappling with, and it's something that Dallas is especially going to have to grapple with, is, the idea that the single family neighborhood was, in essence, created as a segregation tool, really after World War II, in terms of access to capital, in terms of how GI loans were distributed, and then that was codified through zoning. That isn't to say that the West Oak Cliff Plan has to speak to that and fix it entirely. It is just that we know that the results of 60 to 80 years of single family zoning, plus access to capital, plus access to jobs, has resulted in racial and socioeconomic disparities that are clearly defined on race and ethnicity. And the solution that many in cities are coming to is that single family zoning prohibits density, which enhances property values for a limited few, while limiting access to a market for the vast majority of people. And in order to overcome that, there's really only one way to do it. I don't think that the West Oak Cliff Plan, needs to try to solve Dallas's, racial and socioeconomic inequities, alone. I think it's part of a city-wide conversation that needs to be had. But at the same time, if we're talking about just what has to occur from, allowing folks who the median income is $53,000 in West Oak Cliff, what that means on a per month price basis for housing, and then what different housing types a cost for either new construction or for rent. That's the conversation that we had at the last one that kind of has gotten us to here. Just kind of want to be clear on that.
And I just want to add to echo what Daniel is saying. It's about, when you go back as leaders to your neighborhoods, asking the right questions. Is not, do you want to necessarily, part of it may not be just, do you want to maintain single family homes? It's about, what are our goals? Is it to make sure that we stay affordable? And what do we, the character, as was mentioned, the character and the look and feel of the dynamics of the neighborhood, and how do we best do that? Versus, we have to ask the right questions and provide the right capacity and context so that folks can make an informed decision. And then we try to really push the neighborhoods with this information to build your capacity to have the opportunity to make those kinds of informed decisions.
So if folks don't mind, I'll just kind of walk through the slides on this that explains, I guess, just some of the high level, work that was done to think about how different housing types, where they might make sense around transit. So today, in all, the residentially zoned properties, besides a handful, there's like one TH1 property somewhere, is R5 and R75, which basically are single family lots that are zoned to be 5,000 square feet or 7,500 square feet. The only thing you can build on there is a single family house. Based off our discussions at the last task force meeting, what I heard was we should allow accessory dwelling units in these areas, and we should consider allowing duplexes in these areas so long as they, don't tower over the homes next door, that they fit into the character of the neighborhood. And then maybe there are some other housing types that make sense in certain locations. And so those would be triplexes, quadplexes, cottage homes, and then narrow lot single family. So kind of understanding the platted character of this area, what I came to was, okay, there's most lots are less than 10,000 square feet. There are, as I'll show on the maps, there are some lots that are over 10,000. There are residential lots that are over 15,000, and then there's some really big single family lots that you can only build a single house on. And saying on some of the bigger lots, let's think about scaling up what's allowed on those properties, because it makes sense, because they're huge lots that are currently sitting with a single kitchen on them. So essentially they would say on a lot that's 10,000 square feet or larger, a triplex would be allowed. On a lot that's 15,000 larger, triplex would be allowed, unless it's a corner lot, because corner lots, one, are usually larger, and two, you've got access to the lot from both sides, from the street, and it's usually where more a bit larger structure there at the corner of a street. On that are 20,000 square feet or larger, some of these cottage home communities might make sense. And then you've got a very easier to calculate on, be unable to do it. The typical lot R75 is 50 by 150, because that comes out to 7,500 square feet. You've got some lots that are 60, 70, 80 feet wide. Instead of a duplex, allowing individual single family homes sitting next to each other on the same property. General urban design considerations, thinking about buildings orient to the street, thinking about privacy and how they treat open space, private open space in their backyard. We obviously don't want buildings that are crowding over adjacent properties. Parking is obviously something that's extremely important and extremely sensitive. Thinking about, obviously, we don't want everybody to be parking on the street, so requiring parking spaces for these units is going to be important. There are a few tweaks, recommending in terms of, minor reductions in what's required for parking, some variances. So if people want to park off the alley, that they're allowed to, because right now Dallas has a really poorly written code. It's almost impossible to park a garage off the alley, which is what an alley intended to be. Driveways, we don't want, I spent a lot of time driving around. Almost all the driveways in West Oak Cliff are a single car driveway. So we don't want an area that's just dominated by driveways, because there's multiple units on a site. And we're working on diagrams currently that explain a lot of this, but trying to turn that around. But we hope to get something to everybody here in the next few weeks. Requiring entries facing out to the street so that we get porches, and, activating the street and not having garage doors facing the street. Setbacks. The setbacks aren't going to change. It should be exactly what they are today in the current zoning for single family. Massing, and Paul had a really good comment about this in his comments, was, still height and lot coverage requirements should still apply. But maybe there's a requirement that, I know in the historic areas we've got it so that a new building can't be any larger than the footprint of the average, a certain percent larger than the footprint of the average of the other building in that lot. that ensures that you don't have a 6,000 square foot house go down next to a 1,500 square foot house. Architectural requirements, I think, is something that really needs to be done by individual neighborhoods, because each neighborhood has its own character, and they should each have their own little group that explores this. So where would these units be permitted? So of all the residential lots, there are 2,835 single family lots, or 2,835 total lots near transit in West Oak Cliff, or in those two DART stations. Only 329 of those are lots that are that would be large enough, 10,000 square feet or larger, that would allow for triplexes. A lot of those today are currently schools or churches, or they're impacted by topography and floodplain. Wouldn't be all of these. I think, you know, a more nuanced study, I could, you know, identify a lot of those, but we're probably talking more like 200, not 329. In terms of quadplexes, that number reduces even more. So it's 118 parcels total in the area where a quadplex would be allowed. That's including corner lots. So again, some of those are churches, some of those are schools, some of those are floodplain. So again, you might not see development there because you can't build there, or a church isn't gonna, you know, a church is staying. So, and then this last idea about cottage homes, as I mentioned, there's some of these really large single family zoned parcels. It's only 46 of them, but there's 46 parcels that are over 2.5 times larger than what the zoning says the single family lot should be. Again, some of those are churches and schools, but some that are not are these locations that make sense to allow for small cottage home communities. For folks, I don't have a picture on here. Actually, I think I do. A cottage home community is something like you see in this picture right here.
Left.
You know, we could set standard, you know, no more than 1.5 stories tall, no more than 1,500 square feet. You know, these are typically little bungalows where people share a common space. So they probably share a playground, dog run. People have a small privatized area as well as their parking is usually located area or kind of co-located in multiple spots on site.
Boom.
And yeah, y'all can still hear me, right?
Yeah.
Now we can.
I know I lost y'all for a second. My internet in my house is bad. So okay, so again, the specifics of best practices for urban design is, you know, I listed a lot of those. It's in the
Daniel, you might need to turn off your cameras.
Hey, Nick, I just want to say, I appreciate your comments. That was like some harsh reality. I mean, it was, you know, helpful to hear it, but that's harsh reality. And I also want to say that these options don't really sound as, I think maybe some of it is lost in translation. Like, I think if we saw some of this first, before we start talking about, you know, changing things within a quarter mile or a half a mile, we don't know what that means to be changed, you know, what it's going to be changed to. I think
I
that
was
could
having
be
the
a
same
little.
difficulty. I was on Google Earth drawing boundaries to see like what does that actually look like? You know, because I was having trouble seeing it.
I was gonna say, Yolanda, some of the others, maybe we take a weekend or something if you guys are up to it. You know, we do this in commercial a lot. Why not? I can do a driving tour because I know a lot of these examples. There are some examples in Dallas. And we can
Mhm.
just do a driving tour so you guys can visually see both good and bad examples. Um,
And I've been thinking that as we're getting into this stuff, we're getting into more details, and if we're going to start it, not necessarily helping every neighborhood in detail, but trying to come up with architectural guidelines that other neighborhoods can start at least talking about. And we're getting into some really specific stuff, and I'm wondering if
Well, I think
we
that's
need to
why.
meet more often.
It's not the job of the, I don't think that this area plan needs to do that, because all of this would require a zoning process that would require a task force and a process of its own. I think that the area plan is supposed to make recommendations of a direction that we're encouraging to move. And those architectural specific details are things that should be addressed through separate task forces after the process, or else this process will go on for a decade. I mean, I'm
Well,
serious.
I think
Yeah,
that
I'm
I
not
think
talking about that.
no, I think the point is to make sure that in our plan we're making really sincere recommendations, that there's an educational process that needs to happen on the committee. And I, I don't feel like, at all like under any, I don't know, I don't feel any way about what I'm about to say. Like I don't feel badly at all for being on this task force and not having the type of maybe knowledge and resource already that I might need to have, because I think this is what is so important about this process, is engaging people from the neighborhood. Otherwise, when we have task forces that don't represent the neighborhoods, we're never going to facilitate that education and change. So, but I think that we really do need to have a recommendation that talks about this ongoing education, wherever that rests, whoever city department that rests with, to make sure that we continue to move in that direction, to engage and educate people.
Yeah, I mean the best, because it's like there's going to be so many loose ends on this area plan that all we're really going to be able to do is identify as specifically as time allows for the great assets of all the specific elements within the place. So it's not even that it always has to be like, well, there's all this high bus activity here, so we recommend this here. So some part of it is even just, I think, here are all the schools and housing options, within a quarter-mile radius or an eighth-mile radius, whatever, around these schools need to be cognizant of, I mean, such and such values that you would want for, families that could have easy walkable distance
Right.
to leveraging those. I mean, it could be really general, but the idea is that it really helps if we map the things that and the assets that we actually have. And like Paul's point, like I think we probably need to be putting a little bit more time from this point on, trying to figure out in a little more detail what we can identify within our area that's
And
worth the area plan not losing sight of.
and if there's no kind of a city legalese that keeps us from meeting outside of an official meeting, I don't know if there's a rule about that, Daniel, but there's no reason we can't do those things outside of these formal settings. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I
Like
mean,
we're not like limited by quorums and things like that, right?
no. I mean, those obviously tour, we probably won't be recording that and putting that on the website, but I mean, yeah, I mean, I think that the task force should be doing these things if and if not everybody can make it, that's fine. I encourage y'all to do that, and staff is happy to attend and participate as we can.
I mean, I brought the architectural styles thing. The main thing I was thinking about is not doing the work for the neighborhoods, but effectively, if they don't ever organize and we say architectural styles should be governed, or architectural preservation requirements should be governed by neighborhoods, but there's nothing there that the neighborhoods have done, then how does the area plan actually help the neighborhoods related to architectural character preservation?
Well, yeah, and that's actually something that I have to click back a ways. President is going to be something that was one of the buckets. Again, this is only based off what I heard from the community through the meetings. There were a couple neighborhoods that said, "Hey, we want to create." The conservation district process does that. Entire city hall that creates a task force that meets regularly.
Right.
Preservationists on it create these guidelines. One of them was Kessler Park, Ravinia Heights, and then the other one was Hampton Hills, which obviously Hampton Hills is next to the Hampton Dart Station. But I'm
And
not
Daniel,
saying
you mean
this is
Kessler
not
Plaza?
exclusive.
You mean
You're right.
Kessler Plaza?
I do. You're right. That's a.
Okay.
I mean, what I'm wondering, Daniel, is on this point, and tell me if this is too lofty. If we could basically request that a study be done of, I mean, literally every single structure in the entire area plan and label them as likely to be contributing or likely to not be contributing, and not to a specific conservation plan or historic district, but essentially do a structure map exercise of structures that that are similar to in qualification to contributing structures in other districts.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
then at least
that is for the have the capacity to do that. That's a different department. That's the Historic Preservation Office, and that's a multi-year. I mean, we have over 11,000 structures in West Oak Cliffs. I think that's we don't have the capacity to do that. Just gonna have to be upfront.
well, that's what I was wondering about staffing is, I mean, because I mean, I could do a block in, 10 minutes, but it's only just then my opinion, you know?
But map age, we can map age of structure on, through GIS, but that's a simple exercise. In terms of mapping and identifying if something is contributing or not, that would require a historic preservationist to do I mean, I've done it for the Cedars. It took us an entire summer to do 600 structures. So
Mhm.
with a team of 8 of us. So it's
Well,
a
and
very time
that's where,
consuming process.
well, it is when you're actually governed by an actual area. But if you're just trying to give semblance to something, that's what I was wondering about.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess, some things, what to be clear on this area plan is that it doesn't have to solve every problem through the. It can identify problems that need to be solved and need to have more solutions and groups, and efforts to solve them. Maybe that is doing recommending that the Office of Historic Preservation does an assessment of contributing structures in the entire area or in certain areas. That's definitely something it can recommend. To go out and do that is not something that the area plan can or should do, though. Does that make sense?
That's what I was wondering is because it seems like and that's why I'm just throwing it out there. I'm just spitballing here, trying to find out what mapping exercises the area plan can take on that gives any random city staffer or any other developer the tools to basically see like these are the things that WOCAP is most proud of that we're going to have to pay attention to. And some will be prescriptive a little bit in zoning direction. Others will just be, effectively like these are the things that we want. These are the buildings we want you to pay attention to, the areas, the streets, the open space, things like that. So I'm just thinking about the different scales that some of our graphics can have when we're done with this thing, so that so that it's the area itself, as we've digested it all together, is translatable.
Yeah, no, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I think that, you know, there's some weakness to some of that. And, you know, I think some of these things, you know, we can certainly do. But I think it's going to be critical, you know, how and when we do that. I mean, to be frank, it's mostly me doing all of this. So my capacity is limited to do all of this. So, I mean, I do need uh, time and staffing assistance to do some of this work. Even if
I'm
it's
gonna reach
just
out to.
some part,
I'm gonna
even if
reach
it's
out
just some
to.
party diagrams and stuff, you know.
Yeah, let me reach out to some staff I know in preservation and just spitball with them what this looks like, because I think it's more. I'm talking about more of an academic exercise of mapping contributing structures, not a regulatory effort. You know, where you know. So let me see if there's any way of actually doing it, or you know, or at least like punting it to the neighborhoods to how they can actually do it.
I see Matthews had his hand up for a while, so I want to call on him.
Hey, yeah, I'm not sure this is the right time or place to, you know, for me to give this input, but you know, I'm homeowner in the North Edgefield area. I had a chance to talk to a couple neighbors. I live on one of the big lots. I've got several mega lots around me. I hear the talk about a lot of, you know, restrictions on. I'd like maybe for there to be some notation in regards to these areas that, you know, we have some more flexibility, less restrictions, less I guess you know, more flexibility. I went to law school in Houston, city of like no zoning, and beautiful, wonderful, loved it. You know, it's a different, you know, but like a lot of these bigger lots and stuff, I think there's a lot of potential for some just who knows what will happen. I just don't want to be restricted to cottage. I mean, I love cottage homes. They look wonderful. I just don't want to be restricted at this point to like single story cottages. If that's what you know, there's about 8 acres, 3 homes on 8 acres in my neighborhood. But anyway, you know, our neighbors, some of us, you know, we don't want to kick people out. We don't want people to uh, be pushed out of their homes. But at the same time, you know, we recognize that there's a lot of potential in this area, being around Tyler Station, being around Transit Hub. One lady on Nolte, who lives just north of Tyler Station, realizes the potential. And you know, there's a lot of artists, you know, who work in the area, and you know, it's a unique area, you know, but at the same time, we don't want to push people out of their homes, but, you know, we want to utilize the land to its best use of value. I don't know if city restrictions are the answer. You know, this isn't what I do, but, you know, I generally defer to sounds, you know, I think free market will determine the best use of the land, and that's just my opinion. I just wanted to throw that out there.
I appreciate that comment, and you know, I want to be clear that the different maps that I show isn't the only use that would be allowed there as cottage homes. It would be anything that's on the red map. You could have cottage homes, quadplexes, triplexes, duplexes, accessory dwelling units, and single family. And then it progressively gets, you know, the list of options gets less as the lot gets less. It's also to say that, there are creative. I mean, if you've got an acre of land, that's 43,000 square feet. You can divide that into, and you to 4 different 10,000 square foot lots where triplexes are allowed, or you know what I mean. Like, so it isn't to say that you can only do one thing. There's a lot of options within that. We're to come up with neighborhood-friendly design solutions of adding new housing options that aren't large multifamily or large townhomes. That was it. And that's based off most of the community feedback that we received through the public process.
Raising my hand. Oh, go ahead. No, I see Matt raised his hand again.
Oh, no, I mean, I didn't even mean to do that. See, yeah, no, and I just kind of want to push back on that a little bit. I mean, this specific block is a little bit unique in that it's not the old homes of Elmwood or the old homes of, there's maybe one old home, and that was the builder of all of the areas. It's JD's family's home. So, I don't think this specific area is, but I could be wrong, is like wanting those limitations. But I will say I agree generally for the rest of this area. I think it's a with these gigantic lots and no homes on them. And so, I think, some mixed use, higher density might be good for that area.
My turn.
Yeah, I'm done.
Yeah, you can go ahead, Yolanda.
No, I appreciate hearing that from Matthew. That's important. I know exactly where you're talking about. Obviously, there's at least 3 homes that sit on a lot. Well, 4 or 5. Yeah, 4 homes that sit on a lot of property. And I just want to clarify that what I'm hearing from you is that you guys would like the opportunity to develop even higher density on your property. Does that mean like that you want to sell to the developer, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but if that's how you guys feel, I think we need to know that. So,
Yeah.
would you see engaging in building higher density yourself, or?
Right. So again, there's a lot of polls. A lot of people have been polled on this. This specific area may not have voiced their opinion. And so I've only talked to a few people. I probably have more people to talk to. But anyway, maybe there's some notation of like, yeah, I mean, to your question, Yolanda, potentially, it might be the best use for this area to have higher development. But
okay,
and
it's fair enough.
I think it's worth asking. But anyway, yeah, I think that's all I got.
Matt, I got a question for you. Outside of the idea of zoning, since I think one of the things too is that we there's an implicit tension, and I think a natural healthy tension that we've been going through about the latitude of zoning, either in flexibility or in restrictions, along with types of buildings, different types of architecture that are literally based upon our own ideas about quality of life, whether that's aesthetically pleasing or getting, or seeing you be able to raise your family there, or whatever kind of visceral image that we have with buildings. So aside from the idea of like what might go wrong that we need to restrict from, or what we're losing out on by being limited from flexibility, on the other hand, what do you think the neighbors on Nolte see for like as far as like quality of life, in terms of number of families or businesses or types of buildings? What's the quality of life discussion? And maybe you have to kind of make some assumptions for us, but what would you, what would you want, or what do your neighbors want?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, these are tough questions, and I guess maybe it's an ideological, difference of, I'm not sure you can plan, unless you get all these guys in a room and you guys all decide together. I guess that's why I'm saying flexibility produces that outcome. But to your question, I can't answer that question because I don't know right now.
Well, and that's okay. And I mean, I think the I don't know is actually often a great answer. But the point is that and kind of like to a point that that I took from Yolanda's question that I don't know if she meant or not, is that like I mean, there's a there's a good chance that all of that all of the existing property owners in all of the WOCAP area are probably are they have the best mindset for for investing and serving and loving and stewarding their local area. Whether they have an accurate idea what they should put on it, I think that there's probably more personally at stake for them than say future landowners that come along. Now, and that just has a lot to do with the amount of time that most of them had to have been on it. My point in asking you that is so that maybe you can talk to your neighbors, because there's a good chance that on Nolte, everyone has that's been there for a number of years. Like when this thing changes and zoning does, maybe some new zoning changes and authorized hearings happen, then they're these other people that come in, they're gonna have to. It'll take them a little bit longer to learn about this area, about your street, and about their neighbors, and the learning curve will be there for them, and they may not have as much of a visceral connection with the area that you have. So my point is that you're probably in a better spot to just you and your neighbors to say, this is actually what I think we would want, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the a really professional, educated answer, because even though y'all aren't developers, it can just be the idea that y'all are neighbors and that you know the area, and so you can kind of trust your gut thrust on that you're gonna want the right thing for everyone, more so probably than the next guy, just in a probability of it. So I think I think you can still talk about it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think I got more to. I can get some more input. And I mean the requests we have is just very vague at this point. But yeah, I think we can try to steer the conversation a little bit.
My only follow-up was I wanted to ask just Barbara, now that she's taken a look at what was proposed in the overlay, like cottage homes or like how does she feel her neighbors would react to those types of options? Because it's not the big mixed, big huge developments that we might have imagined. And if I could get a glass of wine, that'd be awesome, Nick. Oh, maybe we lost Barbara. I was just curious how she.
She's not on her phone. She's on the call, but I don't see her on her phone.
That's okay. I just feel like, looking at them from that perspective, as as neighbors or neighbors that or a neighbor that like prefers single family, those are not out of the realm of possibilities. I think when you start to talk about overlays and transit oriented development, my mind automatically goes to these big huge things that I've heard from my neighbors that they're not interested in. So it's helpful to see them.
And Daniel, can you clarify for me that a narrow lot single family concept is having a single large residential lot that is large enough to contain two single family homes on it, sort of freestanding?
Yeah, exactly. So I wish I had a diagram to show this, but you've got a standard R75 lot would be 50 feet wide. Like that's what my lot is over in East Dallas. That's not wide enough to put two individual structures on next to each other side by side. You can put a duplex that is a conjoined 2 units, but having 2 individual units, it's not wide enough. But if that lot is 70 feet wide, which there definitely are some lots that are that wide, you can put 2 units side by side that are essentially 2 single family homes that still fall within the required setbacks, are spaced far enough apart from each other to meet existing setback requirements, that you've essentially taken that duplex and just allowed it to be two different units on one lot. So it's really no different than a duplex. It just has a gap between the two buildings.
Exactly. And I just want to make sure that Barbara, and I'm sorry that Barbara can't just chime in, but Barbara, if you're listening, maybe you could chat. But she said that the reason that narrow lot single family, if I understood correctly, would be difficult in her neighborhood because their lots are larger than average. And what I'm saying is the fact that they're narrow lot doesn't mean that the lot itself is narrow. It's sort of another bad name. The lot is actually wide enough to contain two freestanding single family homes. But we call it a narrow lot single family. And Barbara said, well, our lots are so large, we don't have any such narrow lots, so that's irrelevant to us. But it might be very relevant to some of those large lots that could, in the future, sometimes develop into two freestanding, separated single family homes.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that, on accessory dwelling units especially, but maybe on some of these, on when we're talking about allowing people to remain in their homes, an accessory dwelling unit can be a source of income. Granted, it does mean that they have to pay for the construction of it, but an accessory dwelling unit doesn't have to be a separate structure. It could actually be a retrofit of the interior of your home. Maybe you're an empty nester couple who's got 20 square feet and you don't need all that. And you say, why don't we turn the back third of our house into a one bedroom apartment? And that would also constitute being an accessory unit. That becomes a source of income, on your property. And so it doesn't solve, but it can help put a bit more money into paying for your tax burden. So just kind of wanted to clarify that.
Interesting.
Yeah. There's a bunch of, I'm trying to see who was first. I know Paul's got his hand up, but I don't know who just spoke.
Oh, that was me.
Okay, go ahead, Paul. Sorry.
So I was just, listening in. So I can, just to make sure, I'm going to set up a drive so we can tour. Because I mean, when you talk about narrow lot single family, there are some, not quite that, but it's pretty close on Anita Drive, just south of Mockingbird Station. There are some narrow lot single family that's 32 feet wide by 150 feet deep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are pretty new as well. It's in the M streets. It's not something, it's certainly not low quality, but relative to the price point, a single family over there might be, in that neighborhood might be 800 to, a million, right? And those might be something like 500 to 600, right? They're not cheap. I'm not saying it's cheap, but relative to the norm of that neighborhood, it's a more affordable option.
And they follow a lot of the guidelines that we're talking, being parked off an alley with garages in the rear.
Yep. All that.
Well,
yeah, well, I will be sure to schedule, and I'll send out an email as well just to kind of coordinate that if I need to. I will get a 15 passenger van if I need to, just so anyone who wants to come can come, and we'll go through pretty much every example I think has been mentioned here, a lot of which can be found in East Dallas. The other thing is that just that Edgefield and Poke Vernon and everything else, I've heard bits of this discussion before, basically, where it sounds like the Edgefield lots, those really large lots, do want some flexibility. I've heard this. I think, again, kind of driving around and showing some examples, because there's some better examples of townhome development, for example, in East Dallas, and there are some not so great examples. Maybe finding some middle where, Poke Vernon and Elmwood are okay with Edgefield, and kind of something that everyone can agree with, because it sounds more like a neighborhood. I won't say neighborhood versus neighborhood, but just getting the neighborhoods to kind of agree on how they want to treat their respective sides of Tyler Station, right? It sounds like, again, Edgefield wants a little bit more flexibility. Tyler Vernon and Elmwood, Poke Vernon and Elmwood both sounds like they're more open to the triplex, quadplex kind of thing. So that's all I was just going to bring up there. But yeah, I think basically, Danny, we'll be doing a pretty good tour of a good amount of Old East Dallas, which I think will cover almost every good and bad example that's being mentioned here. Because essentially, this proposal is coming, a lot of that is not that dissimilar from that playbook. The only
Yeah,
thing it
I
doesn't
think
have really is it doesn't have any heavy intensity. So, for example, it doesn't have a Mockingbird Station or a City Place in it, right? Or Ross Avenue. But if you don't need it, you don't need it. But yeah,
I think those are great examples and a really good point. And I think that some of the ended up the way it was the age that it was built, entirely a streetcar neighborhood. Um, it also had a strong historic preservation push way back in the 70s, and it allowed for a lot of those housing types of Maine, which was kind of rare because like Oaklawn essentially annihilated most of those through because the zoning was MF2 and it was more profitable to tear it down than to in terms of yeah, I think all the examples you gave are great. I look forward to a driving tour. I see Nick has his hand up, and after that, I just wanted to kind of bounce to the last bucket of recommendations for land use, and we'll probably need to hold off on the focus areas until a future meeting.
I'll give it my long question for you can keep going. I will add, based on what Paul's saying, I think my favorite block in all of Dallas is La Vista Court, just east of Matilda. It is so charming, in my opinion.
I know La Vista and I know Matilda. Are you talking about all those townhomes or?
No, dude.
Okay, because there's a lot of townhomes over there that I would
Let's
not
see.
call try.
See, yeah, no, it is Matilda, but they're quadplexes. They're old quadplexes.
Oh, I know exactly which one you're
And
talking
the
about.
street,
Yeah.
the street has people parking on the street, and you kind of have to, as you drive in, it's a two-way road, but you have to kind of zigzag, but it's a front porch community. And and the way the houses stack, it does this kind of middle housing on an entire block face at a particular period of time in Dallas history. And I think it shows how it can still be alive today. So
Yeah, that's an excellent example. I've actually never seen it. It's tucked away in there. So
yeah, it's called La Vista Court. Anyway.
well, Paul, we look forward to a driving tour, and just let us know when you get it organized, and I want to go too.
Oh, I do remember my question. I'll email it to you.
Yeah.
sure thing.
Okay. So this last bucket is going to get.
Can't hear me. Can you?
Can y'all hear me?
Yes. Now we can.
Okay. That must be like a raccoon chewing on my internet line out, in the alley or something. It's been really bad the last couple days. Okay, so the last bucket is walkable neighborhood mixed use centers. The vast majority of these are focus areas, and those are authorized hearings. So number one is downtown Elmwood. Amend the zoning to allow for neighborhood scale mixed use development districts, including some residential uses. Again, all those we'll get into the focus areas at the next meeting, and you can see all those recommendations. West Davis, I said left to be determined. A discussion I want to have at the next meeting. Hampton Clarendon, amend to allow for neighborhood scale mixed use development, including some residential uses. As a part of this, and this was something that that had come up, is right now the authorized hearing ends in Burlington, but there's CR zoning all the way up to West 12th Street. So would we not just consider expanding the authorized hearing boundary to include other areas that are zoned the exact same way? I think that makes a lot of sense because we're talking about a corridor with no delineation between across one road to the other. There's no change in the character. Northcliffe Neighborhood Center, amend the conservation district zoning to allow for neighborhood scale mixed use development, including some residential uses. I don't want to scare people on that one. It's just to allow live work if the desire was to have like an artist studio, and then allow the houses that are in that area, which is only like 6 homes, to have accessory dwelling units by right. And then the last one in the other nodes in West Oak Cliff, including the school area, Clarendon, Westmoreland Heights Plaza, Clarendon, and then Tyler, Page, and 12th, consider future amendments to the zoning to enable more neighborhood scale walkable mixed use development that works to protect structures but allows for future redevelopment and infill development that enhances these as pedestrian oriented districts. So essentially just saying those, a lot of them already have the bones to be walkable, but the zone has, it's CR zoning, and so you can't get parked because of parking code, or you've got setback issues, or this is use requirement issues that is precluding good neighborhood development there. And so a lot of these are vacant performing. And so just saying that in the future, those are areas where future zoning might want to happen. We can discuss these for a little bit, but I also know we've been on a call for 2.5 hours. So it's you know, I'll let y'all talk about these if y'all like, and if not, we can kind of hold until our next meeting.
I think you've worn us out.
I do want to
All right.
say that I would love to see more mixed use in that downtown Elmwood area, particularly adding some residential. I think that would, I mean, like apartments or however we want to do that. But I think that would be great to liven up that our area. That's all I want to say.
Yeah, and that's definitely what we heard from the community, and we've worked that into our recommendations. Not large apartments, but some small scale residential, you know, that that fits into the scale. And honestly, because of how much that area is surrounded by single family, you couldn't build anything very tall anyways. So
I'd love to for some of those older buildings to be repurposed. That's kind of my vision, but I like older buildings that have been repurposed. So that's just me.
yeah, absolutely. And we've got some good recommendations on Elmwood, so we'll get to those at the next meeting. I feel like I've exhausted everybody.
I think we exhausted ourselves.
Well, I mean, we had a good, healthy discussion. So,
Hey, Daniel, I just wanted to chime in too and to thank everybody. I've been here working on council stuff and listening to you guys actually for almost the entire time. So it's really great comments, and this is how making sausage isn't pretty, right? That's what we always say at council, and but what y'all are doing is really a monumental effort, and it's great. So thank you, and keep up the good work.
thank you very much. Well, I'll just kind of put a pause on the slides here. I'll send out all of these slides and everything tomorrow, record for everybody to have, and we'll make sure that gets on our website as well. I guess, you know, the last order of business would just be to try to determine our next task force meeting. Did Tuesday nights work for people? I know Monday nights were conflict for Commissioner Anglin, so Tuesday works for me.
It's fine with me.
Okay. it could either be 2 Tuesdays from now or 3 Tuesdays from now. I guess some of it depends on when Paul gets a driving tour organized. Let's tentatively aim for 2 Tuesdays from now, which would be the 8th of February. So let's aim for that, and if we have to reschedule because of a conflict, we will. But I don't see anything on. Any other questions or comments before we wrap up tonight?
I guess we will adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for attending.
Yeah, thank you for sticking on late. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.